Welcome
The Chinese.
Welcome
to the
English.
weekly Parsha Shir, sponsored by the UJA in memory of the soldiers and the Jewish people killed on Simchas Torah. May Hashem take revenge of their blood and for the success of all the soldiers and for the peace of everyone on the land. So, this week's class, David was asking, what's the deal with these bells?
And what's the thing? And what are they attached to?
So we'll give a background and explain what's going on here. The high priest, the chief priest, the Kohen Gadol, had unique garments. All of the priests had a uniform. When they worked in the Beis HaMikdash, they needed to work with the uniform. It was a must. But the uniform of all of the priests was composed of just 4 garments. And it was pretty much all white. They had a hat, a belt, a robe, and pants. So I believe it was all white. That was the clothing that every priest wore. The high priest had extra beautiful clothing, and he had an additional 4 garments. Some are more famous. He had the Choshen. The Choshen was, yes, it had 12 stones for the 12 tribes. That's a more famous garment. And then he had the Me'il, which would either translate as a coat or a robe, but it was different than the regular robe. His robe, aside from the fact that it had gold mixed in and it was, I believe it was bluish color, it had on the bottom something very unique. It had pomegranate-looking bowls. Bowls, huh?
Tassels.
Tassels, maybe. Yeah, okay. Pomegranate-looking tassels. And it had little golden metal pegs, which the purpose was in order to make noise.
Bells, no?
Bells. Very good. In order to make noise when he enters into the holy, the high priest would enter into the holy daily. He'd had different assignments, different services he needed to do there. The holy was a very holy place. Entry was locked for most people. Not the Holy of Holies.
No.
Holy of Holies, he would go once a year, correct? But the holy was also typically closed off. No one was allowed to walk in for no reason. The high priest would go there to do different services, to light the menorah, to serve the ketores if he wanted to, and the bread on Shabbos was on that table, the shulchan. It was one of the second to the holiest place in the Beis HaMikdash. It was the Holy of Holies. This was the holy. In order to come into the holy, the high priest needed to have all of his 8 garments, including this coat, which had what did you call them again? Tassels, the pomegranate tassels, which the purpose was in order to make noise when he would enter into the holy. Now, you would think, like Meir said, bells. How does a bell work? You have a tassel, I guess, right? A little ball or something.
It's a bowl with the clapper on
And
suspended.
Correct, with that little metal piece, which is banging and making noise. Rashi tells us, Rashi again is the commentary on Chumash, that these metal pieces were not in the tassels. They weren't in the rimon, in the pomegranate. Rather, they were between the pomegranates. Around the garment, there was 10, 15, 20 tassels. And between each 2 tassels, you had the little piece. The Ramban, Nachmanides, challenges, and he asks if these metal pieces weren't, in the tassels, then what was the purpose of these reminding of these pomegranates being hollow? And beside for the question of why would it be hollow if there was nothing inside of it, he asks, why pomegranates and not apples? That's his
Well,
question.
Apples or something else, whatever. You're making
Yeah, he says, why pomegranates? Let it be apples.
bananas.
Oh, very good. I'll challenge back, if I may. Why apples? Let it be bananas. And someone else can challenge, why bananas? Let it be pomegranates. What do you have against pomegranates exactly? That's our question to Nachmanides. What's the issue with the pomegranates? So before we move on, I'd just like to share a story. There was a famous rabbi, the Satmar Rav. Anyone ever heard of Satmar? Rav Yoel of Satmar. They mainly in R in Williamsburg. He moved to America after the war, and he was one of the bigger rabbis in New York, in Brooklyn. He had a large community, and typically, like many other rabbis, he would share on Shabbos or whenever it was, he would share some words of Torah to his students. When people would come visit the Rebbe would often ask for them to share what they heard in other places, words of Torah. The way Jews communicate, what binds us? Torah is what binds us. What makes our nation a nation is the Torah. So when two people meet, they talk about Torah. It says a person shouldn't part from his friend only with a matter of halacha.
English.
I said first in English, I'm translating to Hebrew. A person, when he parts from his friend, he should always part with words of Torah. So Jewish people, when we meet, it's customary, it's proper to share Torah. So the Rebbe, our Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, asked this fellow, which came to visit him, can you share what you heard from your teacher? Which in this case was the Satmar Rav. And he said, sure. He raised a question. At this occasion, the most recent occasion, or in this incident that the student was repeating what he heard from the Satmar Rav, he raised a question. His question was on the Gemara, on the Talmud, in the end of the tractate of Makos, I believe. It says over there, on the verse of Shir Hashirim. Shir Hashirim is one of the 24 books of Torah. Torah has 5 books, but the Tanakh, the full Torah, comes along with the Nevi'im, the prophet, and the Ksuvim. So in the Tanakh, there's 24 books. One of the very special book is the book of Shir Hashirim, the Song of Songs of King Solomon. And in that section, in the Shir Hashirim, it says, Kipelach harimain, I'll translate in a moment, rakosech, like a piece of a rimin. What is a pomegranate? What are the pieces?
Seeds.
Not a seeds, like a piece. Is there any word for it? Section, maybe. Like a section of the pomegranate are rakosech. Yaakov, what does rakosech mean? Do you know?
No.
Rakosech means empty, rake. That's the verse. Like a section of a pomegranate are your empty ones. The Gemara asks, what does that mean? Like a section of a pomegranate are your empty ones. So the Gemara explains something very fascinating. The Gemara says, the Talmud says, the Jewish people, even the empty ones among the Jewish people, even the sinners, even the Paisha Yisrael, some people like to crown themselves a Paisha Yisrael. You'll have to see if it's worth it to crown yourself in that title, because you'll see what the Gemara, what the Talmud says.
I've earned it.
Even those empty ones, even those sinners, Paisha Yisrael.
Why are these sinners? They're just simple.
We're talking about the sinners. We're not talking about the simple ones. Even the sinners, even the ones who Paisha Yisrael actually means those who transgress against God's will intentionally. Paisheya.
Not Parsha?
No, not Parsha. Paishe. Sorry.
Sounds similar.
Yeah. Paishe Yisrael. Even they are like a section of a pomegranate. What does that mean? Says the Talmud. Even a sinner is full of mitzvahs, of good deeds, like a pomegranate is. That's what the verse in the Song of Songs is coming to teach us. That even a sinner, even if he earned it, he's a qualified sinner, even he is full of seeds, full of mitzvahs, like a pomegranate is full of seeds. So
I solved the mystery.
this is, let's finish the story. This is what this person repeated to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, what he heard from the Satmar Rav. This is what the Gemara, the Talmud said. What was the Rav's question, Rabbi's question on this Talmudic statement?
Which Rabbi?
The Satmar Rabbi. He said, I don't understand. If we're talking about a sinner, an earned sinner, a qualified sinner, how does he have?
I got credentials.
Certified.
How's he have?
Not the only one.
How's he full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate? He's a certified sinner. How is he full of mitzvahs like a ribbon? He's like, I don't understand what the Talmud is saying. This wicked man, you want to tell me he's full of mitzvahs? I don't get it. He left off with a question. When the Rebbe heard this, he smiled and he says, I have a very similar question on this Talmudic statement. My question is, if this sinner is full of mitzvahs like a pomegranate, why are we calling him a sinner? This is the story.
What he thinks of himself, probably.
This is the story, which is a powerful story, and we'll get to it to understand what's this battle exactly between the apple and the pomegranate. So let's rewind. Why did he have these pomegranates with these bells? What was the purpose? So the verse clearly states the purpose. The purpose was in order that he should sound himself, should make notice of his entry into the holies. But that begs the question. Which question does that beg? Does that make sense to you people? That the Kohen Gadol?
Being heard by whom?
Himself.
Of course. When you go to somebody's house, you ring the bell to
it
announce
again.
yourself. You
This
don't
is
just
different.
walk
This is
in. It's
different.
bad manners.
No, this is
Okay, one
different.
second. That's Eliezer, your opinion. David, what do you think of it? We're asking what's the purpose of the bells was in order that his
To announce him.
Oh, so people know that he's doing mitzvahs.
No, we're talking about the high priest when he enters into the holy. Yeah,
So you
David.
shouldn't say the bracha of Atah.
That's the forechamber.
Yeah,
Yes. But he's the only one that entered there.
pretty much
So
correct.
why would he have to announce himself? Because
Okay.
he's the only one.
Okay, so
And
So we
God
shouldn't
being
make the
God
bracha of
all
Atah.
present, he knows you're entering.
okay, so Eliezer is saying when you went, no, it's not about a bracha. Why is it a bracha here? Here we're talking about the Kohen Gadol entering into the Kodesh, into the.
Yeah, what do you call it? Well, he, for some reason, I remember where it was his chosim or something don't add up, might not add up, so they would know when he's done the avodah that rings it up or something. I'm not exactly sure.
Okay.
I remember, I think it was actually one of the chitas today or yesterday. No,
Yeah, it's this week.
I
It's this week's
can't
Chumash.
remember reading it. Like I
Okay.
forgot the exact.
So Eliezer says it's only mannerful when you walk in to make notice. David is saying it's only God over there. God knows what's going on. So unnecessary.
But
That's-
it's God's house, you know.
Okay.
No, you
It's a
can't.
house.
God's house and your house is not the same house.
So
You
first of
knock in your
all,
own house?
Huh?
You knock in your own house? When you go to the bathroom in your house, you knock? Yeah, of course. You want to know if somebody's in there.
No, and I'm talking to David. He lives alone.
How do you know that?
That's why you go in hell.
so to make the question
You better warrant, you better not
to
come
make
my door.
the question a little to get a broader picture.
Is there specific instructions for pomegranates to be encircling the dress of the high priest?
Absolutely, everything is written clearly.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's written, it's self-explanatory. If it is not written, then it's a vanity.
Bruh.
It's written. Is it self-explanatory? Do you understand it?
It's literal.
He said everything Hashem says is good.
Correct, but we're talking about if we can understand it. You're right.
Could we understand?
The question is, we want to try to understand it now. Yeah, we're not questioning if to do it or not. The reality is, again, let's repeat. What it says is he should have the bells, and it says that the reason is he should be his sound should be heard when he enters. That's the words of the verse. If I'm translating it correctly, his voice should be sounded upon entering into the holy. So let's get a broader picture. When the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would enter into the Holy of Holies, which was when? No, he was appointed.
He was appointed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he was appointed by the Sanhedrin. Yeah. So when he would enter into the Holy of Holies, when does the Jew? When is the high priest entering into the Holy of Holies? David, familiar? Once a year.
Once a year.
Which
Kippur.
Yom Kippur, very good. On the high holidays,
I am Jewish,
very good. Oh, you see,
Well, mitzvahs.
full of mitzvahs, not just Jewish. Correct. So when the high priest enters into the Holy of Holies, in the holiest day, does he enter with the bells? No. He enters with the white clothing, the regular clothing, without the royal clothing. So this is getting very tricky here. On the one hand, when he enters into the holy, which isn't the Holy of Holies, he needs to have that bell ringing, like Eliezer is saying, which perhaps that may be the solution. It's a mannerful move. On the other hand, upon entering into the Holy of Holies, he for some reason doesn't need these bells. So, I want to take you through a journey in history. We spoke about Solomon, which wrote the book of the Song of Songs. There's Shir Shirim. There's a book in the Nevi'im, in the prophets, the beginning of the prophets, the book of Melachim. Melachim is the book of kings, which it goes through the history of the Jewish kings after the Holy Temple, during the Holy Temple, the history of the Jewish kings. And along the history of the Jewish kings, we have the history of the prophets, as the kings were appointed by the prophets. And one of the most famous prophets we have is, anyone knows?
Samuel, no?
Oh, yeah.
Samuel's after Samuel, one
Yeah.
even more famous than Samuel,
Oh, yeah. No.
more famous than Yirmiyahu. Shaul was a king, wasn't a prophet.
Wait, I'm trying to remember. Hold on.
Let's give David a chance.
Literally not
Let's
even
get-
listening
let's-
to where I'm saying.
What did you say?
Oh, yeah, hold on.
Let's give David a chance. Again.
Okay, you heard me, but okay.
Huh?
Elijah.
Elijah. Yaakov got it first. Credit to Yaakov. Yaakov said it first.
No, I didn't say Elijah. I said, oh, yeah.
The most famous prophet is Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet.
Charlie's name.
Charlie just walked in, so in honor of Charlie, we were mentioning it. So Elijah the prophet, very good, David. Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi,
How do you call him?
Eliyahu in Hebrew. Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah, yeah. Elijah the prophet.
Remembering back. Hold on.
He was around back then.
We went to Chabad together. What are
There
you
you
talking?
go.
Alanuvi.
Eliyahu Hanavi, exactly.
No. Alanuvi is how we say.
In Polish. We say Eliyahu. In Polish accent, it's more Eliyahu. By Russian, it's Eliyahu. Ashkenazi Eliyahu. Okay. Eliyahu Hanavi. Very good. He's the one who comes to every circumcision. He's the one who comes to every Pesach Seder. The prophet Elijah. The prophet Elijah. Prophet Elijah, we don't know where he's buried. Why don't we know where he's buried?
Because we worship the spot where he was.
Because he wasn't buried.
Good question, though.
Elijah,
Supposed taken up there.
very good. He went up to heaven with his body. We're talking about Elijah now. When he went up to heaven, before he went up to heaven, he was accompanied with his cherished student, which is also a famous prophet. I'm not even sure how you say his name in English. He's not as famous, but Elisha. Elisha, anyone else how you say it in English?
That's it.
Elijah.
Not Elijah.
Elijah is Eliyahu.
Oh, yeah.
How do you say Elisha?
Elisha.
Oh, fine.
Elisha, maybe? Elisha. Oh, that's what's pronounced in English also.
Instead
Okay.
of having to just call it that.
So Elisha was his student, and he offered his student a tremendous gift. He told his students he's going to have double of whatever he had. And Elijah was a big prophet. He told the student he would have double what he has, but he told him, you're only guaranteed to get this gift if you're going to have a certain vision when I go up to heaven. If you're going to see what I will describe to you, that will indicate that you're worthy to credit this gift.
So it's like conditional almost.
It's-
Conditional.
yeah,
Conditional.
Yeah, he's telling him, he's indicating a way of knowing what if he's going to be getting it. Eliyahu then describes to him what will happen when he goes up, and he tells him, you're going to see fire. You're going to hear loud noises. I believe it was 4 different visions, 4 different steps. And Eliyahu tells his student Elisha, when you see the fire, that's not yet the revelation of God. That's not what we're talking about. When you hear that noise, it's not yet the revelation of
It's
God.
a shofar noise? What kind of noise?
I don't remember.
Trumpet, yeah.
Could be. I have to.
Unfortunately, I know what he's talking about.
Okay. And then he tells his student, after you're going to hear and see all of those fascinating things, there's going to be koil demama daka. Complete quiet. Complete quiet. When you come to that stage, everything relaxes. Everything becomes perfectly quiet, like the famous expression, you should be able to hear a pin drop. That's when there's going to be the godly revelation. If you'll see that, then you know that you're going to credit my gift. Why are we bringing the story? When a person comes to serve God, should he come in quietly as he comes into the Holy of Holies? Or should he be coming in with ringing bells, flaming fire?
Sweating maybe. He's
What's the
nervous.
right way? What's the right approach? What's the right approach? From here, we clearly see from Elijah's instructions to his student that where is God found? God is found is where it's quiet and silent. And it actually makes a lot of sense. Why? When you want to greet someone greater than you, and you want to be receptive to what he has to offer, you need to move yourself out of the way. If you are busy promoting yourself and making a deal of yourself, you're not going to be able to be receptive to what the other person has to offer. That is in any encounter of people. How much more so when we're talking about God? If we want to be able to be receptive, if we want to be able to greet God, to talk to God, to become in touch with God, if we're busy making noise about ourselves, what are we going to be able to take? We're not leaving any space for God. The Hebrew expression for this is bittul. Bittul means nullification. If we want to connect to God, we need to be nullified. Noisy, commotion is seemingly not the way to greet God. And the answer to this is, there's 2 ways of connecting to God. There's the beginning process of connecting to God. Then there's the ultimate process of connecting to God. Yes, when we're talking about Elijah and his student Elisha, that's the ultimate. When you want to reach the ultimate, you need to be totally quiet. Koil d'mamadaka, self-nullification. You can't be taking up any space. Yet, that's the ultimate. When a person is at the beginning stage, when a person is a sinner, when a person is a poisheya, when a person is not in good shape, when a person is drowning and he needs to rescue himself, he needs to hold on to God to rescue himself. He's not at the ultimate stage of getting the greatest God of the revelation. He's drowning. He needs to get out of the water. When a person is drowning, he doesn't ask nicely and quietly, hey, can you please come save me? What does a person do when he's drowning? He shouts. He shakes his feet.
No, you can't shout.
if before he's deep in the water.
No,
He's
you
drowning.
absolutely. If you're, trust me, when you're drowning, you can't make any noise with your mouth.
I'm talking about person is.
After you're in the water.
We're talking about you're still and you're trying to tread and you're trying to keep yourself and you feel like
Above water.
You're trying to get a live person's attention.
you scream as loud as you can, you bang the water as loud as you kick as loud as you. Why? Because now it's not the time to ask nicely. When you're gonna be out of the water, dressed and all ready, and you want to come say thank you to the lifeguard for rescuing your life, yes, then you're gonna go knock on the door gently, come in like a gentleman, and say thank you. When you're in the water, almost drowning, you got to do whatever it takes, which it takes lots of noise. When a person is in a state of sinning, he needs to scream to God. He needs to make noise. And like Eliezer said, you want to come to God? You have to knock on the door. You have to come with noise. Why? Because if you're deep in the water, you need to knock on the door. You need to bang loud. The high priest is not deep in the water. So why, when he enters into the holy, does he have to make that noise? The drowning person should be making that noise. The high priest is like Elijah. He's like Elisha. He should be coming in silent. Take off his shoes, carpet floor. You know those rich houses? You can't walk in. I was recently in some lawyer from some big firm. He lives in Detroit. He has a special apartment for when he comes over here. Like fancy building with guards and whatever. He came in, he was
Dimitri?
No.
In Manhattan or where?
In Manhattan, we came in for a shiva. His father passed away. So
And he gave
we
the
were
Chabad house $10 billion.
we were 10 people, and all of us needed to take off our shoes before you come into the house. The high
Wipe your
priest,
feet.
the high priest should be coming in like Elijah. What is he coming in with noise? Like the drowning person? The answer is, if the high priest is only going to be thinking about himself, he's failing his purpose. The high priest is representing all people. And that's why, what does he have on the bottom of his coat? He's representing the bottom Jew, so to speak.
He has bells?
He has bells. Yeah, you missed the beginning. On the bottom of his coat, he has those bells, those noisy people, the people that are drowning. And if he's missing those bells, all of his service is disqualified. Why? Because if he's missing one Jew, he's representing everyone except for that one Jew on the bottom, he missed the point. He needs to be representing everyone. And that's why, yes, he has to bang on the door. You can't come in without making yourself noticed. When you are drowning, like Eliezer said, now is the time
By the way,
to scream to God, God, I'm here. I'm changing my ways. I want to come into the holy.
it's not called drowning, by the way. Drowning, you mamish cannot make it.
I'm using it as a metaphorical.
You can get through. Don't worry.
Yeah, metaphorical.
It's so easier.
Now, we mentioned that on the Holy of Holies, on the holiest day of the year, then there was no bells. The reason for that is, on the day of the Holy of Holies, every Jew becomes a tzaddik. Every Jew at that point, his record is clean. He's like a malach, right? That's why we wear white, like a kittel.
What if he doesn't?
Every Jew keeps Yom Kippur.
No.
Overall, every Jew keeps Yom Kippur.
There's a discussion that the day itself purifies you, even if you don't keep it.
Correct. Yom Kippur is a very powerful time. We see, hey, you're going to say some people don't come to shul, but overall, you see even people that are so far.
Right. Everybody comes.
Overall, there's
Yeah,
it's a different vibe. It's a different vibe.
I had a question. Why does now? Once I was by Brighton in the shul and I saw, people that open stores on Shabbos and so on and so forth. So I couldn't understand. What are they doing in the shul on Yom Kippur? Why? It came to me. Why? Because on that day, what opens up? Yechida opens up.
Very good.
And
Yechida, let's explain what Meir is saying. Yechida refers to the core of the Jewish neshama. The Jewish neshama,
It's
the
five.
soul, has different parts, which those parts can be covered. You can dump them into the mud. There's a core that never can get ruined. The
That's,
most that can happen is you can put a box around it that you don't notice it.
that's a good answer, huh?
But very good. But there's sometimes that core just shines, everything breaks off, and independently of what the person was throughout the whole year, on that day,
That's the only day.
The
it opens
core
up.
just-
That's the only day.
the core just
That's the only
shines.
day.
That's
Yeah.
the only day.
Yes.
It opens up.
The question is if a person will be successful to keep it open. But on that day, whether a person likes it or not, like Meir is saying, he works on Shabbos, that day something just doesn't allow him. He just feels like it's just taking him to Shul, it's taking him to God.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So on Yom Kippur, he doesn't need the bells. Why? Because no one is on Yom Kippur, everyone's just
On their best behavior, Kaga?
yeah, Hashem just picks them up. And therefore, then they're like, you're in your own house. You're one with God. You don't have to knock on the door. But when a person is coming into God's house as an independent creature,
Thank you.
independent being, he doesn't recognize God. He's independent. He's going against God. And now he wants to change his ways. He wants to do tshuva. So now, like Eliezer saying, you come into your friend's house, you don't just come in. You knock. You turn your back to God and you want to turn back around. There's only one way. You're going to have to shake yourself up like the person in the water. Shake yourself up and tell God, I know I was wrong. I know I was off. I want to come back now. And God takes us in. Not only does God take us in, if the high priest tries to come in without helping us, the sinners come in, his service is disqualified. It says even more than that. It says, in order for the high priest to stay alive, he must come in with those bells. If he's lacking any garment, any part of the garment, including if he's lacking those bells, which again represents us on the bottom.
Except on Yom Kippur.
Yeah, in the Holy of Holies. If he's lacking even those bells, he's disqualified. He's liable for death. That's how important it is for God that everyone comes in. God says, even those sinners, I want them coming in. They're gonna have to knock. They're gonna have to ring. But I want them in.
First.
Yeah, together with the high priest.
I know.
Now, going back to the pomegranates and apples. We spoke about the pomegranates and apples. What's that deal? Rashi, again, what does Rashi call in English? Anyone knows?
Rashi.
Rashi, that's what the
Rabbeinu Yitzchak.
Shlomo Yitzchaki.
Yitzchak.
Rashi again says,
Is he the French guy?
yes,
Interesting.
Troyes.
Huh?
Troyes, I think, is where he was born. That's the name of the city, I
In
believe.
what year? In 11 something?
Before internet.
I don't know exactly, but
Yeah.
about so. It makes sense.
Huh?
So Rashi says again, pomegranates. And the bells weren't in the actual pomegranates. Again, those pieces were between the pomegranates. The Nachmanides, the Ramban says, why pomegranates if it's not a bell? If the peg, the metal ring is not in the pomegranate, why a pomegranate? Let it be an apple.
It's called the clapper. Pardon, sorry.
The clapper, thanks. In the tassels, what are they called? The tassels, yeah. The clappers in the tassels, yeah.
No, I know. Tassel is something else. That's right. No, I'm talking about the remote
The-
seeds.
Not the remote seeds. No. The bell
Yeah. What?
The bell was in a castle.
in the Rimon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Castle, right? Yeah.
Oh, the E Tessel?
Those things that are hanging in
Yeah. Okay. So
So the bell is in it, and what else?
the
was-
bell was not in it. According to Rashi, the bell was not in it. It was next to it.
Look at that. That's
Nachmanides,
between. You see that thing
It's not a trout.
right here?
that is in between. It's not in between. There is some. Oh, yeah, exactly. Something like that. Yeah, very good. So Nachmanides says, if the bells are not in the pomegranates, then let them be apples. We know the menorah had how many sticks? Who knows?
7.
8, no? No. The 9?
Charlie says 8. Yaakov says 7. Charlie.
6 or 6.
Hanukkah.
So the Hanukkah menorah has
9.
8, 9 with the Shabbos.
Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
Shabbos is 7 days in one.
Yeah, it's 7 only. The Beth
seven,
Amikdash
seven.
is
So the-
7.
But when I go into
What's the
shuls,
time?
those are rare occasions, I see this.
Yes, this is a made up one. This is not a. This
That's
is
not a.
a regular candelabra. Yeah. So in the temple, it was of 7.
It's 7.
7. The menorah we light at on Hanukkah is 8, 9 with the shamish. In the menorah in the temple, it was 7. The menorah had 7 sticks. Why? Representing 7 different forms of the way Jewish people serve God. And guess what? On the menorah, there was apple-shaped gold apples on the menorah. Why? When we want to talk about a Jew that's serving God, what do we compare it to? An apple. Nachmanides says, if you want to talk about a Jew, Nachmanides taught the secrets of Torah, Kabbalah, in his commentary. And therefore he says, a Jew, why are you calling him a pomegranate? A pomegranate indicates a Jew who is sinning. He says a Jew is an apple. Just because he appears to be sinning, in its core, he's an apple. If you want to represent a Jew, you just want to make an image, an indication of a Jew, right? The bottom, the lowest Jew. Even the lowest Jew that's at the bottom of the coat, he's an apple. Don't give me a pomegranate. Rashi doesn't teach secrets of Torah in open. And therefore Rashi says, what do you mean? If a Jew is sinning, we're not going to compare him to an apple. We're going to compare him to a pomegranate. Even the sinner has lots of seeds, which means even him, that sinner, will have lots of mitzvahs, but he's still a sinner, and therefore he's still a pomegranate. Nachmanides says no. I always...
Mystery.
Huh?
Mystery.
Which one?
About the sinner being full of mitzvahs.
Which question?
I mean, we guys in the Ein Yaakov, I mean, we solved that weeks ago, but, go ahead.
Okay. The Nachmanides says a Jew is going to be an apple, even if he's at the bottom, he's going to be an apple. Rashi says no, he's a Riman, he's a sinner. But even though he's a sinner, he's still full of the mitzvahs. He's still full of the commandments. So what's the takeaway from here? The takeaway from, first of all, you always have the view that Nachmanides teaches us, which is important to keep in mind, that a Jew in his core is not a pomegranate, he's an apple. He belongs, the way he is on the menorah, he's perfect. A Jew is always perfect. It's his only external appearance that's doing the sins. The whole commotion that a person makes of his sins, he has to realize that's just an external garment that he can just take off, and he can meet his core, which his core is pure. And even when he's all the way in the bottom, even if he's the lowest Jew, he's still not a sinner. He's still a beautiful apple, which represents a Jew in his perfection. That's step 1.
That's what an apple is, a Jew in perfection.
An apple represents a Jew in perfection. Yeah.
Tzaddik.
A tzaddik, yeah.
Yeah.
Every Jew is a tzaddik. Even the lowest Jew, he's still going to be a tzaddik.
The core, because he's got a
Correct,
core.
because of his core.
You-
He has different, there's different kinds of tzaddikim. Not every tzaddik has to be the greatest scholar. There's 7 different branches. There's many different ways of serving God, but every Jew in his core is perfect.
Tzaddik doesn't sin.
Correct. Every Jew in his core, you go down to his core, you don't see any trace of all of his sins. All of his sins are external. It's like a little scratch. It heals and it disappears. It's nothing is there. That's the view, the perspective of Nachmanides.
So then how do you see it then?
How do you get down to the core?
Yeah, how do you see a person's core?
So, like we see, Yom Kippur comes out,
Microscope.
and if a person will prepare himself for Yom Kippur, the longer the effect of Yom Kippur will stay. If a person waits for Yom Kippur, then after Yom Kippur, he's going to go back to the way he was right before Yom Kippur. But if from Rosh Hashanah, the person already starts thinking about what's coming up, and if already from the month of Elul, he starts preparing, so he allows his core to shine. He sort of makes a home for his core. This way the core will be able to stay. But it doesn't have to be on Yom Kippur. The truth is, whenever a person is put up in challenge, you see a person wakes up and he says Shema Yisrael. If a person decides that he wants to tap into that core, he will be able to tap into that core. And yes, he will be able to clear his record, erase it as if it never existed. It's a decision that he needs to make. He really doesn't need time necessarily to work on it. It's a decision that he has to, it's a realization really. Nachmanides is coming from a point of a realization that a Jew can come to recognize that his true reality is really clean without any trace of sin, which if he taps into that realization, with one moment he can make that switch. Practically, he's gonna have to continue working on it. If he wants to change himself practically, he has to connect to that reality and act accordingly. But the turn is one turn. It's just that realization that that's the true reality of a Yid. But I want to focus on another lesson from this idea.
Can I just
We're just like 2-3 minutes. We're done. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and we'll make a bracha.
Yeah, please. My
Sure.
sister yours said on Thursday,
Sure.
so I'm not gonna be here. So please.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
Please.
We'll make a bracha for Mary's
Please.
sister. What's her name?
Chana Bas.
Chana Bas.
Ludeleya.
Chana Bas Udaleh should have the tremendous aliyah. She should come back down with all of
Yeah.
everyone resurrect Chiyas Amesim. Well, after the shir, we'll make a bracha.
Please.
So the shir should be the schusa.
Amen.
So typically, what's greater, Mayor? The tzaddik or the Baal Tshuva? The one who comes in like Elijah, who killed Mamadaka without any noise, or like the one who's in the water, banging, flopping? Who's greater, Mayor?
Obviously, the son.
The tzaddik is greater, right? That's what we would think.
We would think that, yeah, but
Our sages come and teach us that the place that a Baal Tshuva stands, the place that a person who repents, returns to God, a person who was away from God and then returns to God in his place. Did you learn it already in Yaakov, Eliezer? Not yet.
I know we figured out the pomegranate. You know, not sure about the person who returns to his place, because we've done a lot of that when a person returns, person goes on a trip, but I'm not sure if it refers to what you were talking about.
Okay, so let's see. When a person returns to God, he was away from God and he then returns to God, he does tshuva. The Gemara says, Talmud says, a tzaddik, complete tzaddik, does not have the ability to stand in the place and the level of a Baal Tshuva, of a person who returns to God. What's the explanation? Why?
Sounds more like a Hasidic thought.
I know, but it's in the Talmud. It's fascinating. Correct? Yeah, it looks like straight out of a book of Chassidus, but it's written clearly in the Talmud. What's the explanation? The explanation is as follows. Even if a person is a tremendous tzaddik, again, like Elijah, we're using that example, which connects to God with complete self-nullification, he is containing God. What I mean to say he's containing God? He's prepared and he's ready to take God in. He's preparing for that moment of his unity with God, and he's, so to speak, handling the godly revelation. That's why he doesn't jump. Why is he not jumping? Because he's used to it. He's ready for it. Take the example of a politician meeting the president or whatever else, whoever high official it will be. Will his heart beat when he walks in?
Yes.
Likely than not.
Depends
Why?
on the politician.
A politician that's deep in. Why not? Because it's not his first time. He already knows the office. He already knows the drill. He doesn't get excited. No, I'm talking about anyone. Anyone who knows the system, he's ready for it, and therefore he doesn't get excited from it. He doesn't get nervous from it. Someone who's doesn't know anything about politics, doesn't know anything of these things works, and suddenly they take him in. They take him in chamber after chamber after chamber, and he finally comes to this room, and he's guards all around. He's just totally shocked. His heart is beating. Everything is with a commotion. What does that tell us? That tells us that the person who's used to it doesn't get excited about it. He feels like he has it under control. The person who's new to it, he's new to it, which is a disadvantage. On the other hand, he realizes that he's connecting to something that's greater than him. A tzaddik is stuck. Why is he stuck? Because he's such a good boy. Because he's in perfect shape. He feels like, I got it. He feels like God isn't so big. I have control of it. I can contain it. The Baal Tshuva, he's all the way on the bottom. He's nervous. His heart is beating. He's like in the water. He's kicking. He's waving. But what advantage does he have? That he realizes God is greater than him. He realizes he does not have control of the situation. In that sense, even the greatest tzaddik does not stand in the place of Baal Tshuva. Why? Because in truth, no one has God. No one can ever get God. Because God is by far beyond greater than anything we can imagine. And therefore, no one can ever get God. And the Baal Tshuva has that feeling that there's no end to what he can get. There's more and more and more and more than he can get. That's what the noise and commotion indicates. It indicates the recognition that Hashem is endless. And my connection to Hashem can be endless. And therefore we have to remember that we all, even in our good parts, we have to think back to that connection that we have after we do something wrong and we realize to return in our ways. David HaMelech tells us, there's a famous song, familiar? I'm thirsty for you, God, like a person in a desert who's thirsty for water. And then David says, Kain ba'kodesh chazisicha, just as when I'm in the desert looking for you, when I'm thirsty and I find you, it gives me a tremendous relief. I wish that also when I am in the holies and I see you, it should be with the same experience. The same experience of finding God after losing him, so to speak. Even a person who's in the holy, he has to yearn to have that connection that a Baal Tshuva has. That connection that's unlimited, that connection that you found something that you can never have enough of, that you want more and more and more, you feel like it's running away from you and you need to fight to get it. One last point we're going to share and then we're going to pause it and then we're going to make the bracha for Leah, Bas, Chana Bas Luda Leah, Anna Bas Luda Leah. The importance of serving God with the commotion is more important in our generation. Why? Our sages teach us the way we struggle with the bad is in the methods of the bad. The way we struggle with the enemy, the best way of struggling with the enemy is using the tactics of the enemy. The Rebbe says today we find that in contrast to past generations, that people had some sense of menschlichkeit. When they did something wrong, they didn't print it in the papers, they didn't do it in Times Squares on the screens. They did it, but they had some sense of dignity. Yeah.
Propriety, yeah.
Today,
But Rabbi, it's all fake. It's
Today-
all done, for attention to some
Correct.
things. to
Correct.
other things,
but today, true, but the reality is today we see, the Rebbe says, we see that all of those boundaries broke. All of those things that were done indoors, people feel like they can do it outdoors in public. What does that tell us? When we deal with the Holy of Holies, we can't anymore do it quietly. We have to balance out the negative influence. If they're going to make a big tararam from stupid and silly things in Times Square, we have to do the same exact thing. We have to come in with the mitzvah tank, put on those loudspeakers, come over to people. Hey, sir, are you Jewish? Did you get a chance to put on tefillin today? Do you have a mezuzah? Can we check your mezuzah? Can we bang in your mezuzah with a lot of noise? We have to come in to balance it out with that same noise. And speedily, like the Gemara tells us, when Rabbi Akiva, famous sage Rabbi Akiva, was with a group of friends, and they saw the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, they began to cry. Rabbi Akiva was laughing. Later they came to Rome on some communal affair, and they saw the contrast of the city of Rome to the city of Yerushalayim, which was destroyed, and Rome was so beautiful and built. They began to cry again, and Rabbi Akiva was laughing. They challenged him, why are you laughing? They said, he said, why am I laughing? Why are you people crying? They're like, what do you mean, why are we crying? We're crying, we see what all of these sinners, all the people who destructed the temple, look what they are having. They're having wealth and etc. Rabbi Akiva says, that's exactly why I'm laughing. If those who go against God's word receive so much, can you imagine what those who do God's will, what they will be receiving? So may all of this negativity flip and in a positive way it's always more effective and more powerful than in the negative. So may we speedily see tremendous brachas for all of Klal Yisrael, the coming of Mashiach speedily. How do we turn it off again, David?
By pressing the button.
Which button?
Just hit the off button.